Welcome back, guys, to another episode of The Refined Lad. As you know, the last 2 weeks I've been inactive. The first week I was actually on a business trip, and then I didn't get back till last week. Kind of needed to recover. Lost a family pet in the process, so that was a little difficult. We're back, and we're more ready than ever to tackle some really strong topics that I think need to be dealt with that aren't addressed by society or really anybody at this point. I think a lot of things have become too mainstream that have been pushed into our viewership to kind of just immerse ourselves within that are not actually beneficial for us. So all that saying, when I went to this business trip 2 weeks ago, I was blessed to meet a group of other men trying to improve upon themselves. I got to sit down with men as well as women. And the common denominator that kept on popping up in their lives was that at some point, or even now, they struggled with corn addiction or a sexual addiction or a struggle that they had. And they have just, it's felt like such a burden. It's felt like such a worry to them that they just want to be free. They just want these like chains to be taken off them, basically, because they feel enslaved to this very thing. And so something interesting that I found is that corn is not just exclusive. You know, watching it is not just as exclusive to men as much as it is to women. Men and women both watch it. In fact, the statistics that I was reading show that just last year, 75% of the viewers for corn were men and 25% were women. So for me, this has nothing to do with shaming. I want to help others. In the past, personal friends, close friends, I've been rather aggressive, I guess, in my stance with pornography in general. I'm only aggressive because I struggled so deeply with it, especially in high school and early college years, that I want to raise more awareness about it. And I feel like it's not being taken as seriously because, like I said, these mainstream narratives are getting pushed in our face to kind of just accept them for what they are. I mean, we immerse ourselves right now. Like, let's look at the platform of TikTok. We have so many women that are basically peddling videos that are very inappropriate, that will lead to links of their OF personal website, and these guys are just eating it up because it's been shoved so much in our face now that men have become not only desensitized, but a lot of them are still kind of like arrested at this age, right? They're like these little boys that are seeking for that validation. Like, oh, if I could just feel some watermelons, if I could just touch a peach and slap it. We have become so obsessed with that. And so what I want to talk to you guys about is when it all starts, it depends on where we're at in life. Maybe we had it happen when we were younger, right? And we didn't understand what was completely going on. We were, maybe a few years old at the time. For me, my first experience with anything close to that was I was 5 years old, and we had somebody working on our house. And I remember being in the living room and VH1 coming on. And that's, I guess, is what you could call, your first kind of awakening. So at 5 years old, I'm already, like, ready to rumble, even though I don't understand half the stuff that works on down here. So I see a video, and it's actually Britney Spears' video for Toxic, which this is, like, peak Britney Spears era. I mean, she was looking... I'm watching that, and it's like something awoke in me, right? And y'all probably laughing at this, but this was my first real experience with, like, oh wow, like, women really got something going on, So fast forward a few years later, I'm with a friend from church, and literally after we had like Sunday school or like a youth group or something like that. I think I was 6 or 7 at the time. I believe I was 7 at the time. I was downstairs on the computer, and him and I were sitting next to each other, and I looked up big, big watermelon women, and I Google imaged it, and some of the images were absolutely grotesque, right? But some of the images were like, okay, well, she's very, fertile. She's looking like. I know that the majority of you have seen my testimony and kind of the things that I had to grow up with. So my environment probably wasn't the best for that. It kind of cultivated. It was a lot of things that caused that. And so the result was I basically got caught. I got grounded. The kid did not get grounded because he blamed it on me, which, I mean, it was my fault, but he also kind of encouraged me. But that is what it is. But it was like that moment was my awakening, and that's why it's so like super important for people to understand. When I talk to you guys too about generational rooted things, I talk to you guys about generational sins, generational curses that are put on your family line. You might be 4 or 5 years old, again, having an awakening, and then you might have a thought that is impure, right? You might have a thought that is totally out of the box for a 5, 6-year-old, and an adult would be like, did something happen to you? But sometimes we inherit the curses of our forefathers and, our great-great-grandmothers and down the generational line because you share the same blood that your ancestors did, and it's very spiritual more than it is also just physical. So what I'm getting at is this. Society has shoved in our face, especially the last, I'd say 5 years, men have become desensitized and they've literally put the cat on a pedestal rather than their own purpose. And so the issue that we have is all these guys that are little boys because they're not men, because a man would know how to control his primal addictions, right? And again, just to preface, I'm not trying to shame anybody. I dealt with this particular situation, and I really had to find my way out, and it wasn't easy. So I just want to talk to you very briefly about a few things that pornography actually does to the body and brain. We have mirror neurons, and this has been extensively studied in research. You guys can look it up. Where if we are viewing something, what that does is it acts on a part/center of our brain that genuinely, because of the auditory and visual input that we're getting, genuinely makes us think that we are the ones in the video performing these acts rather than just viewing. So you know how you get like super immersed in a movie and you're feeling like tension and stuff, like maybe it's like a drama or a scary movie and you're feeling all this tension, you're shaking, and it's because your subconscious doesn't know the difference. Well, you add the mirror neurons to it and you genuinely think that what you're doing is you're doing this girl or ladies, you're doing this man or whatever. You're doing somebody, right? And it's not realistic because that's not actually the case. You're tricking your brain into thinking that you're the one having this transaction, right? Rather than just viewing it. And what the mirror neurons are is it's just an evolutionary response that we have gathered that basically just personalizes the experience of the viewer. So the other thing about this is that, well, I'm gonna put up a statistic here, but it also shows how much this industry rakes in from the views, from people paying for things. You see the rise of OF. You got these women and men, putting up monthly subscriptions to their things. You pay them monthly, they send you videos or you get access to content. This is what we have become. And the issue with the addiction that I had when I was in high school was so bad that, according to one of my best friends, I would literally just watch it. I would watch it in class, but I wouldn't actually do anything. I would just have my phone out and just be watching it in class out of boredom. And as a result, I'm consistently desensitizing myself. And when I talk about the desensitization, nobody when they first start watching porn will continue to watch the same category for the rest of their life or every time they view things, okay? Because what happens is those mirror neurons get acclimated to the fact that, okay, I watched I watched Girl Girl, for example. Okay, well, that doesn't excite me anymore. Now I gotta watch Girl Girl Guy. Okay, now I gotta watch, and it just progressively gets worse. Now I'm gonna share with you guys in a minute something that absolutely terrified me when I started reading about it, especially with the rise of fetish sizing. Jeffrey Dahmer with the new biopic that came out on Netflix with Evan Peters. He had shared some things in a court document in regards to what Korn actually did to him in regards to how he acted out. And I know that's a little bit of a more extreme example, but I'm going to share it anyways because you guys need to understand something, and this is what I had to realize. When I was so far gone that I couldn't even function, and the thing was that I was depleted of energy every time I did this. I mean, we're talking, I did this 2-3 times a day at some point, even when I was in high school. So this was really something that I had struggled with. And so I want to share something too, is big shout out to Ruby, who had shared with me that pornography is just a gateway, right? Now, I told you guys before, and whether you choose to believe it or not is up to you, but everything we see in the world is more spiritual than it is physical. As a result of that, I do believe there is a spiritual aspect of it. I'm not talking about religion. I'm not talking about, anything in particular. I'm talking about just a spiritual transaction. I'm going to explain why. I want you to look at this phone, right? Look at this phone. I want you to look at this phone. I want you to look at this phone, and then you see the black screen, right? I want you to look at this phone, and you see a black screen. So you're looking at this black screen. Next time you catch yourself watching Korn, I want you to just think about it, right? You're doing it, right? You're like, yeah, baby. Oh, yeah, work it for me. Come on, work it for daddy, right? I want you to realize how sad and pathetic and cringe that is, okay? You're talking to a black screen. Turn your phone off when you watch these videos and you're looking at a black screen. Now, the Chinese believe that we have qi. Qi is energy. I believe we have energy. Whatever you want to call it, body, soul, spirit, we have energy that flows through us. We have meridians. We have these chakras. We have these things that flow through us through these centers. This has been widely researched and documented, especially in Eastern medicine. So, let's take the fact that you have the qi, right? You have this free flow of energy. That energy should go towards something that is actually beneficial towards the body, right? So, something that I did when I had these urges is I literally would just start doing push-ups until my shoulders would give out. Because good luck doing anything with your arms after doing as many push-ups to failure till you can't even get up, okay? You're at least going to really think about doing it again, and then you do another push-up, because you have to discipline your mind. We have to understand that it is actually a disease, and it's not beneficial for us. Now, I know some of you might have been hoping for a video about me telling you how great Korn is and that there's some positive benefits to it, but there genuinely is not. I can tell you from my own personal experience. On top of that, going back to this black screen, you are making a spiritual transaction when you are releasing your qi. I don't need to get into what that is. It's No Nut November, boys. Get on it. When you are releasing your qi, you are releasing your energy. You are releasing it for what? Why do you feel deprived, right? Why do you feel low energy? Why do you feel shame after doing it? Because Ruby pointed out that the black screen almost acts as a portal to the spiritual, right? And a lot of this stuff is, I know it sounds kind of crazy, but just hear me out. It's a portal to the spiritual, so I'm literally making a spiritual transaction every time I'm releasing my seed. Rather than harnessing that energy, doing something productive, going into business. Napoleon Hill has a whole chapter on this in Think and Grow Rich called SV Actual Transmutation. So, when I was in high school and I had these issues, the other thing is that I had these unrealistic expectations of women, right? And I've talked to men and women about this, but women especially, when they're in relationships or marriage, you don't realize it, but you're expecting them to look a certain way. We both care about appearance and how people look. So you're looking at this video and you're like, wow, very different, right? You expect that because these things have a caked on makeup and you have these expectations that are unrealistic. So let's say you get in a relationship, you get into marriage, and you're expecting to do these things that you're seeing on a video, and she's like, well, I'm not about that. And it's because there is such a resentment and hatred that is built. I mean, even men, we will be watching a video. I remember the first time I watched one of those videos, and I looked down at the dude, and the dude's like this. Man's got a full-on submarine sandwich, and then you're looking down here and you're like, that's not realistic. So it creates these altered perceptions, and again, some people might be like, oh, okay, obviously that's because you're old now that you understand that. But when you're young, when you're 12, 13, 14, 15, I literally started when I was, I think, 12 or 13, and I went all the way till I was about 19. I mean, that's a long time to be doing that consecutively. Struggling with it, feeling shame after, feeling that burden of guilt and all this worry, right? That I'm doing something wrong. But when I realized that it was a spiritual transaction that's made, when I realized that I was putting the cat up on a pedestal rather than my own pursuits of my own journeys and my own goals and ambitions in life, that's when I had that thought. I mean, it's so bad. And I've talked to men about this before, and the issue with it simply is sometimes they can't even perform to the standard because they're so desensitized down there. I mean, some dudes really are like jackhammering it, right? And then it doesn't work. So I want to share with you guys something with the rise of Dahmer that I kind of just was looking at the other day. There's a FOIA document, and I'm going to read it to you. And this is Dahmer talking about what Korn did to his mind. Now, I'm not saying you're going to become a serial killer if you watch Korn, okay, guys? Don't take this out of context. What I'm saying is that it has been a determining factor in a line of notorious serial killers and mass murderers. It did something because a lot of it is prone to violence. It's directed towards certain scenes that are consensual in the industry, but don't seem consensual when it comes to the actual video. And then it shows that those certain people are actually enjoying the fact that they didn't consent. So it causes this horrible divide. And a lot of people don't like to agree with this either, but I found personally when I had been struggling with it those years ago that I was more aggressive towards women in particular, if that makes sense. Because it created this false perception of what I think things should be like. And that's such a dangerous place to be in. So I'm going to read you this Freedom of Information Privacy Act that they had on Dahmer's file. Dahmer advised that he started turning to pornography and heavy to try and satisfy his fantasies, but at around age 16 he started having the violent fantasies of sleeping with a dead body. Dahmer stated that he would turn to pornography to satisfy his obsessions. This would depress him and would make him want the real thing more and more. So just like anything else, it led to... That's not what drove him over the edge, but it was a contributing factor that led to him doing those things. And he was slowly getting desensitized by it. I mean, if you guys read about him, and I believe Pogo the Clown, who was John Wayne Gacy, they would visually just analyze that kind of content, those images, before they went out and committed these acts to kind of stimulate them, to arouse their senses. And when I put it in the context of how serious, I mean, this documentary has blown up. When I put it in the context of how serious that this actually is, not to mention the fact that there's statistics that show that particular industry has a lot to do with the sex trafficking rate. whole nother ball game. So what I'm encouraging you guys to do, what did I do? Well, I literally quit cold turkey, and it was the most difficult thing I probably ever did. It literally felt like drug withdrawals when I did it. We're talking like cold sweats. I mean, we're talking... Me personally, I have a very high sex drive, and I needed to learn to tone that down. I needed to learn to put that towards something productive, right? I needed to learn to put that towards something that is going to bear fruit in my life, help others, help myself, help the next generational line. The picture is so much bigger than us. And as always, I'll catch you in the next video. Stay frosty.